It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Maine University Associate Athletic Director for Compliance, Samantha Hegmann. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you got started being a compliance officer?
Sure. So I was originally a student athlete in college. I was a track and field athlete at Monmouth University in New Jersey. When I graduated, I had the, degree that was so ambiguous in health studies that could kind of go anywhere. Tried to go to nursing school, didn't get in, and then went and did my master's in sports management. I was lucky enough. My sister is actually also in college athletics. So when I was going through my master's program, I went and visited her at the institution she was at the time, and had the chance to be able to go around and interview the other people, everyone that does their job, marketing, ticketing, athletic communications, to kind of see what they did. And she was actually the compliance officer at the time. And she said, well, do you want to know what I do? So I sat down with her and she went through the whole manual, rules, regulations, all that kind of stuff. At first, didn't seem very interesting to me. And then when I finished my master's program, it just so happened that the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference was looking for a compliance fellow. They couldn't find anyone to fill it. And then I was recommended. So went there, did my year there. It was great because not only did I do compliance, but we ran championships, did marketing events, so kind of got a litany of a bunch of experience. And then I was lucky enough to get my first full-time compliance job at my alma mater, at being at Monmouth for 5 years or so. And then I went home to Hofstra University. I'm originally from Long Island, and was there for about a year and a half as their assistant athletic director for NCAA education and compliance. And then I've been here at UMaine as the associate for about a year and a half. I started July 1 of 2019. So we've kind of hit the ground running up here.
Whoa, you've had an amazing career. Can you talk about what you've achieved and accomplished at Maine University as a compliance officer?
Yeah, so when I came in, I was lucky enough, my boss, our athletic director, Ken Ralph, basically told me I can do whatever I want, run my compliance area however I wanted, whatever my vision was. And we kind of overturned everything. I would say the biggest accomplishment we had was our overhaul with our rules education. So beforehand, there wasn't really that many meetings, that many one-on-one opportunities with coaches. So when I came in, we overhauled it. So we have monthly meetings with all staff members, not just coaches. We encourage all staff to come because they have a responsibility to compliance as well. And then we also did individual team meetings. So, we'll have a team rules ed with women's soccer and swimming and, basketballs, that kind of stuff. And then we also did one-off meetings with athletic training, strength and conditioning, ticketing, marketing, all that kind of stuff. So I would say for us, that's kind of our biggest piece, is making sure, because the NCAA puts a lot on us to make sure we educate our coaches and our staff on rules and regulations. So that's one of the biggest things we overhauled and we've done in the year and a half I've been here.
Can you talk about your time as administrator for the softball program at Maine?
Yep. So as a sport administrator, every team has a sport administrator. They're basically, obviously the athletic director oversees all, but they're kind of the buffer before the athletic director. So you have your sport administrator and then the athletic director. So as a sport administrator, we work hands-on with the coaches, kind of their liaison to anywhere on campus, anywhere in the office. If there's any problems or, disciplinary issues, scheduling conflicts, they're having trouble getting their uniforms in, we work with them and the necessary people in our department to make sure that we're there for them. And we travel with them. Unfortunately, given COVID, I couldn't do as much as I wanted to. Because once our season kind of got started, we played very limited weekends and then got shut down. So unfortunately, but we go to games, we travel with them, kind of basically we're the liaison for that program and work with them one-on-one.
Can you talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis as a compliance officer?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I have many hats. Not only am I our associate athletic director for compliance, but I'm also our senior women administrator. So we have our compliance duties, I have my SWA duties, and then I have the random bucket of problems people think I can fix or have a hand in that we have to work with. I would say the biggest piece on a day-to-day is it's never dull. There's always something new. A lot of times it's really, compliance is a lot about, I would say, is like customer service, because we work a lot with one-on-one with coaches and help them problem solve and figure out what they need to do. We answer a lot of interpretive questions with them, work with them to try to get their program best up and running as best as possible. So there really is no chart day to day. You know, we come in and we have a list of probably like 20 things we need to do, and then maybe 2 get done because there's more that goes on top of that. So no day is the same as the next.
Can you talk about the process, of course, whenever it comes to, like, for example, me interviewing a coach? What process do you involve in that?
So we are not really that much involved. That's a lot of our athletic communication is. We will be involved if a coach gets asked by either like a scouting or recruiting service to do, say, like a podcast or endorse them or anything like that. Or if a high school wants a coach to do a talk or anything like that. So we really govern those areas because there's strict NCAA legislation around recruiting services and when coaches can and cannot, talk to those people, especially now since we're in this like extended dead period. They can't really do any sort of podcast that involves any sort of prospective student athletes. They couldn't do a Zoom call like this and, talk to a bunch of high school kids on the processes of what it's like to be an NCAA athlete. So we more so govern that side rather than the one-on-one interview side that normal reporters have with our coaches.
Can you talk about the process as an associate compliance whenever it deals with recruitment? Do you play a role in that?
So we do play a role. The NCAA has what's called the eligibility center. So every student athlete that wants to become a Division I athlete, they also have it at Division II, has to go through this center. It certifies their academic and amateur eligibility. So we work with the coaches. We do, for instance, if they come on a visit, we do pre-reads to make sure that they're hitting the certain caveats that they need, that they would become eligible, because they need to be eligible via the eligibility center in order to be able to practice, be able to compete, receive their scholarship money. So it's really important on the front end that we get their transcripts and their, was test scores, but because of COVID, they suspended that, and basically have an idea to tell coaches, okay, Susie's coming, but she's going to be deficient in an English, so make sure she's taking an English her senior year, so she meets the certain caveats and meets certain GPA in order to be eligible right away at the University of Maine.
What are some of your favorite things as a compliance officer that you do?
I would say some of the favorite things that I do is, one, being able to work with our coaching staff. It's definitely interesting managing different personalities for sure. But also too, we do deal with some kind of sensitive issues where student athletes have, whether we have to do a waiver or anything like that, where, say they come and they don't meet those requirements, or they have, are having a hard time at home and then their academic struggles. So I think for me, the most rewarding piece is being able to take a student athlete and maybe they don't meet the necessary requirements or anything like that, and working with them in order to make them eligible. I also think with NCAA rules and regulations, yes, it's very black and white, but there's a lot of different shades of gray. We have our manual, but then we have this database that we go in, and there's plenty of interps and educational columns. So just being able to work within the parameters of our rules to be able to provide the best opportunity for our student athletes is the most rewarding part for me.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know before you started as a compliance officer?
So I will say when I was a student athlete, I thought the compliance officer was a drag. Like, oh, I have to do my meetings every year. This is awful. All right, yeah, let me sign the paperwork and let me go so I can go. Yeah, I'll sign my drug testing form so I can go and compete. Now being on the other side of the coin, really realize how much work a compliance officer actually does, not just, governing and overseeing student athletes, but overseeing staff, overseeing the rest of campus. We oversee 450 student athletes and their eligibility and academic requirements, along with 100 plus staff members that we have to make sure that know our rules and regulations and are educated enough so that if there is an issue, if a student athlete is, say, receiving extra benefit or preferential treatment, that they are able to identify those areas and report them to us. And then also cultivating relationships with the faculty too. A lot of times athletics can be kind of siloed, or, the rest of campus kind of thinks that athletics just does whatever they want, where, we really try to bridge the gap and make it one community. We encourage our student athletes to get out there and make relationships with other people that aren't just in athletics. But for me, I think what I didn't realize is how much this seat does. And it's not just, okay, yeah, I do your forms every year and have your meeting, but the more in depth of, there's 20 plus bylaws, there's 300 plus pages that we have to kind of work with and govern. And, that's one of the biggest pieces that I learned sitting in this seat.
What advice would you give future compliance officers looking to get into compliance?
My biggest piece of advice for compliance officers and for anyone that wants to get involved in college athletics is get your foot in the door anywhere possible. Whether it's volunteering, usually compliance is always one thing with compliance. We're always understaffed and we always are willing to take volunteers. So if you have the opportunity to, go to their local compliance officer, if they're a student athlete or someone in the community, and, do a few hours a week, it will help. But really for any student athlete or anyone that wants to get in athletics, as much as an unpaid internship is not as glamorous, it's necessary because that can put you in contact with the necessary people moving forward.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
We have our Maine Compliance Twitter that they can find us at, and we will be up and running.
Thank you again, Samantha, for your interview, and best of luck at Maine University as an Associate Athletic Director in Compliance.
Thank you, Brandon, for your time.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Samantha, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.